What's up, YouTube? I'm Liora Sophie. I am a writer and an author tuber, and I write urban fantasy and some short spiritual fiction. And what I mean by short spiritual fiction is I write short stories that have some kind of spiritual element to them. So they're not necessarily classic fiction in any way, but they're also not fantasy. The best example of this is I am working on a collection right now of short stories, an anthology, really, that which with a working title of 70 Faces, which is a collection of retellings of stories from the Holy Scriptures. So basically, I'm a huge nerd of the Tanakh, which is, the Old Testament, the Jew Bible, the Jubal, and so I flip through it and I find a story with some kind of strange element that raises some question marks, and I try to fill in the gaps with my imagination. So sometimes when I tell people this, they say, "Oh, like the red tent?" And the answer is yes, but also no. The Red Tent is a piece of fiction, and I think it's beautiful and well done, and I loved it, especially because, it is kind of right up my alley, but where I differ from that style of writing is I'm very true to the text. I don't seek to contradict what's written necessarily, so much as to really fill in some things that I think are kind of obviously missing, or sometimes just to understand. Let me give an example. One of my stories, which is actually currently published and you can read it on my website, is called The Commander of the Iron Chariots, and it is based on chapter 4 of the book of Judges. Basically, there is a war and there's this bad guy, and then this woman kills him in a really brutal and violent fashion, and as much as we all know he's a bad guy when you're reading the voice of the text, he's obviously the bad guy, but this character is in a kind of strange position where she's sort of in a truce with his army, so she is supposed to be on his side, and then she kills him anyway. So it just begs the question, why did she do it? Whenever there's a murder, there's got to be a motive, right? And this is obviously, it was premeditated, it was intentional, there was no question there. Why did she lured him into her tent and then killed him in this really violent way? Why did she do that if she was supposed to be on his side? And so I dove deeper into the text and I read it until it came out my ears, and I just kind of tried to get inside the characters' heads and understand what was going on, and I wrote The Commander of the Iron Chariots as a way to answer my own question: why did Yael kill Sisera? So you can check that out on my website, Commander of the Iron Chariots. Sometimes it's just shortened to Iron Chariots. It was a winner of a flash fiction contest on Silver Needle Press. That was fun. And so I have a whole collection of those that I'm working on. I have about 12 of them written right now, and I'm gonna make a series of videos because I spend a lot of time thumbing through this, well, not this book, the Hebrew version. I read it in the original Hebrew because I'm a nerd, and because I spent so much time in school reading it in the original Hebrew that I'm just so, it's like looking through Harry Potter. We have an expression in Hebrew, we say lahavdil, which means, this is very important to separate these two things, even though one might seem like a metaphor for the other, because one is obviously sacred and the other one is obviously not. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, it's just kind of visual memory at a certain point. I've spent so much time poring over these texts, I just kind of know where things are at a certain point. So I spend a lot of time reading this old book, and I encounter a lot of funny things, strange things. I mean, this is a really good book. If you haven't read it, I definitely recommend it. Take it one piece at a time, though. Don't try to do the whole thing at once. That's not gonna work out very well. So hopefully I'm gonna do a whole bunch more of slightly humorous book reviews of the books of the Holy Scriptures. And that's what we're going to start with. We're going to start with the book of Samuel, because the piece I'm working on right now is called Loving the True King. And it is about the relationships between King Saul, King David, and King Saul's son, Prince Jonathan, which are intricate and human and really beautiful, and raise so many questions for scholars since, it was written, which was quite a while ago. My story explores the themes of toxic masculinity, the different characters' relationships to violence and leadership, and their relationships with each other. And I also do occasional posts on my Facebook page called Snarky Tanakh, where I read the dialogue, and sometimes the dialogue in this book is hilarious. I mean, comedy gold. Let me give a few examples. We're talking like, here, I casually opened the book of Samuel this morning and just landed upon this one quote where, like, King David is fleeing from his son Absalom, who wants to kill him, and some dude comes out and starts cursing him out, and one of his soldiers, Abishai ben Zeruiah, who, hi, bro, not you, the original, your namesake, says to him, he says, "Why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over, I pray thee, and take off his head." And then King David says, "What have I to do with you, ye sons of Zeruiah?" Now, there are 3 sons of Zeruiah, and David has relationships with all of them, and they're all trouble. And so I kind of feel like the way that this scene actually went down is Shimei ben Gera curses out the king, and then Abishai says, "Are you gonna let that SOB just curse you out like that?" And David is like, "What am I gonna do with you Zeruiah boys? What are you gonna learn?" You know what? That's pretty funny for the Bible, okay? Yes. Because when you think of people who lived like 3,000 years ago, you don't really imagine them being snarky, but they definitely were. Exhibit B, David running away from King Saul, who is chasing after him, and he ends up in Gat, which is not necessarily friendly territory, and he starts to freak out a little bit because the king of Gat and his people are kind of closing in, and so he starts acting like a crazy person. Says, David was sore afraid of Achish, the king of Gat, and he changed his demeanor before them, and he feigned himself mad in their hands. And he scrabbled on the door of the gate and let his spittle fall down upon his beard. Okay, David acting like a crazy person, fine, but this is what we're here for. Then said Achish unto his servants, "Lo, when ye see a man that is mad, wherefore do ye bring him to me? Do I lack madmen that ye have brought me this fellow to play madmen in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house?" Burn! Are there not enough crazies around here that you brought me one from the outside? So, yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about in this series, and I hope you enjoy them. And keep a lookout for my anthology, for my collection, 70 Faces. I don't know if it'll be called something else. It's probably going to be called that. And go check out Iron Chariots on my website. There's a link in the description. And hopefully Loving the True King will be out soon as well. It's really good. I'm in love with it. So, anyway, see you around the tube. Oh, don't forget to like and subscribe. Because, you know, I make good videos, so do that. If that sounds, okay. Basically, oh, don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye!